Okay, so welcome to the third video. We're going to learn a few more things about finale that are going to help you with your first assignment. And we're going to go over that as well. So let's get right into it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create just a default document. This is good if you're just trying to create a quick document for no particular instrument. So the default document is just a treble clef single staff document. It's good just to start off. If you're going to do anything with multiple instruments, it's always good to set that up as I showed you last time. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is how to add, how to create chords, how to add intervals. As it turns out, that's how you create chords, really. And when I talk about chords here, I'm talking about notated chords, not not chord charts. That's a different thing. So I'm going to show you first how to do this with the simple entry tool. That's actually my favorite way to do it. It just seems easier. If I just, let's say, have an E, let's just do this. So a half note E over here, and I want this to be an E minor. I could do this either by going above that note with the same note value and just adding a G and adding an E. That's one way to do it. But it's kind of hard sometimes to get the exact pitch you're looking for. You know, let's say you're trying to do something like this. You know, it can be easy to mess that up, like I just did now, for example. Yeah. So if I want to do this, so that's one way to do it, which is certainly valuable and legitimate. Go back. But the better way to do it is to just go by interval. So let's say that I have several, let's say a series of triads, right? So what I could do is I could do this. I could say E, F, G, A, and let's say I want all of these to be triads. I could just go to the first one. All I'm doing is because this one is purple and it's selected, I can just move from one to the next pitch with the arrow keys, left and right. And of course, if I go up and down, I'm going to change the pitch diatonically. But while I'm at it, there's also other shortcuts as well, which you will be needing to learn for your test. And there's a study guide for all this. So like the plus sign raises the note, the N key brings it back to natural, and the minus lowers it one half step. But anyway, going back to records, what you do is you look at the numeric keypad, or if you're using a laptop, you just look at the numbers, and any number you press, well, what it'll do is it'll add that interval above the note. So if I press 2, it'll add a second above. So in our case, we need a third above above E, I'm sorry, and another third. So it'll go from the pitch that's currently selected. So if I wanted an E minor chord with an additional note up here, I would have to go 3, 3, 4, because E to G is a third, G to B is a third, B to E is a fourth. So note that we're talking about diatonic intervals. It doesn't, let's say if you wanted to do an E diminished triad, you would actually then have to go back and flatten that note, which is fine, but it's a very quick way to do this. So if you wanted to have a series of parallel fifths, you would do this, right? This is really bad counterpoint. Okay, so that's what that is. Then you could also do this using the Speedy Entry tool, which is the tool we're going to talk about next. Although it doesn't work quite as well, I usually use the Speedy Entry tool to enter my main notes, and then if I need to enter chords, I go in with the note entry tool and add those, just as I showed you with numbers. That seems to be what works best for me. Anyway, so let's get into the Speedy Entry tool. So the Speedy Entry tool is very good for to enter notes by hand. There are other ways to enter notes, which we'll get into in a minute, using a keyboard. But if I'm entering notes by hand, and I just want to do it in kind of a faster way than having to do this each time, making sure I hit the right note, which can be kind of tedious. I like to use the Speedy Entry tool, and basically what you do is you just select the Speedy Entry tool, you click on a measure, and now you get to sort of bar and there's a little cursor. And if you move your arrow keys up and down, the cursor will move. And what that's showing you is wherever note value you're going to enter, that's the pitch it is going to be assigned to. And the note values have shortcuts in the keys. So number 5 is a quarter note. So let's say I wanted to enter quarter note B. I just put the arrow on, the cursor on B, press 5. So if I want to enter 4 quarter notes in a row, I just keep pressing 5. And as long as this cursor is at B, anything I enter will be a B. So I can enter, let's say, let's go back. Let's say I can do, delete that as well. Let's say I just wanted to enter a rhythm. I could go. Now note that I sort of entered the pitches at tempo, but that doesn't matter. That was not, the timing of my keystrokes was not what determined the note durations. What determined the note durations were the keys that I was pressing. So that if I press, let's say I wanted to enter half notes, and I do it very fast, I could do number 6 is half notes. I could do, so it doesn't matter how fast you enter them, it'll still be half notes. Okay, so in other words, it's not listening to what you're doing, it's just waiting for you to enter the right keystroke. So I like this quite a bit. It seems to be the fastest way to work for me, especially since I don't play keyboard very well. One quick thing, if you want to clear things, if you select measures and you press delete, it'll actually delete the measures. It'll remove them. This is only if you're selecting all the systems. In this case, we only have one, so it'll delete everything. So in other words, if I select that measure, press delete, it'll delete the measure. If I just want to clear the items from the measure, then I'll select everything, or whatever I want to clear, and I just right-click, clear all items. You can also specify which items you want to clear, which is a little bit more of an advanced feature. It does come in handy sometimes if you've created lots of articulations and you decide you don't want the articulations but you want to preserve the notes. Then you would actually do something like this. Let's say I have these articulations here, blah, blah, blah. Let's say this is over 100 measures. I have all these different measures, and I have maybe articulations and some other things in there. I could select the whole entire region and do clear. Sorry, you can't see that very well, but it says, see if that works better. There, clear selected items, and you can just choose which types of markings you want to delete. Anyway, this sort of besides the point. Excellent. So let's also, there's one other thing about Speedy Entry that you need to know, which is that if you enter too many notes, Finale will get fussy and it'll start to say, what do you want to do? You enter too many notes. What do you want to do? You want to leave the measure alone, which you can do, except now you have too many notes, and you get this funky stuff here. And that note seems like it's on the other measure, but it's actually still within this measure. It's just Finale is having trouble understanding what you're trying to do. So usually, if that happens, it's a mistake. So you could say something like delete the extra notes or move the extra notes onto the next measure, keep moving things over. But you get used to this because Finale doesn't like when you do that. It doesn't just let you put however many notes you want. You can do that once again, but it'll have trouble aligning everything. Okay, excellent. Let's say you've been writing music and suddenly you realize you forgot to copy a measure. For that you would insert a measure, let's say in between those two, and what you'll do is you'll just select this measure, right click, and say insert measure stack. I just need one, so I just do this. There it is. If you have not enough measures in your piece, and you need more at the end, then you would actually do right click and add measures. So let's say you want another 100 measures. They'll get added at the end. Once again, I want to remind you of the fit measure feature, which is very handy. What you're going to be doing for your assignment is copying the first 2 pages of a Beethoven sonata, and you'll see that a lot of it is 4 measures per system. I'm trying to see if maybe it's all of it 4 measures per system. No, sometimes it's not, but for the most part. So it would be helpful to be able to set it up that way. In this case, Finale is already setting it up for us that way, but for some reason, let's say you move things around, and suddenly you wind up with this many measures here and this much there, right? And I showed you this before, but all you want to do there is select all, and then go to Utilities, move this thing around, Utilities, Fit Measures, and then you can say Lock Layout with 4 measures per system. And then it'll just rearrange that. There's also another important shortcut to know, which is Command A. I'm sorry, Command U. Which will update the layout. Sometimes that's going to be helpful if you see that things are kind of bunched together in a weird way. If it's not a good reason, then you do Command U. Sometimes usually we'll refresh everything and make things a little bit neater. Okay, excellent. Other thing I wanted to tell you about these is ties, how to create ties, which we didn't go over last time. Now remember that ties are not the same thing as a slur. So a slur is like a musical, has to do with phrasing, whereas ties actually affect the duration. So although they look very much alike, they're created 2 different ways in Finale. So ties, if you're using the note entry tool, you'll just simply use this. So let's say I want to tie these 2 notes together. I'll select my note entry tool, simple entry tool, and I'll go to ties. And if I click on this note, it'll tie it with the next. Now, obviously, the 2 notes have to be the same pitch, or else it won't work naturally. You can also do it using the Speedy Entry tool. Let's say I wanted to tie these 2 notes together. You press the equal, which is the same as the plus. And it can be kind of confusing because each tool has its own kind of shortcut features, and one of the things I want you to do is to memorize the basic ones, and this will be one of them. If you have the Speedy Entry tool, the equal will tie, untie notes. Okay, so if you're in one tool, it's good to know what the basic shortcuts are there, so that you don't have to keep shifting between one tool and the next. Okay, so let's take a look at the assignment. I think most of what you need to do here you already know how to do. I want to make sure that we cover all the stuff that you don't know. For example, take a look at this measure right here in the bass clef. You have an 8th rest, and then you have a G, a B, and a D, and then underneath you have separated notes. It's like, it's basically an arpeggiated triad, but what the music is trying to tell you is that those notes also have their own individual duration. So that can be kind of confusing to do. So for this, this is kind of a peculiar case, but basically whenever you need to do more than one thing at the same time, we talk about we refer to those as layers. So let me zoom out a little bit. Let me just do this as well, because you can't see it. There we go. Okay, and the way you deal with layers in Finale is through this right here, this little menu. So right now, layer 1 is active, which means any notes I entered will be on layer 1, which is the default layer. Now let's say that I wanted to do a separate layer. Now this is not the same thing as adding notes to my chord, to adding pitches to the notes that are already there. Like if I wanted to add a 5th above, right? There's one more, another shortcut just came to my mind. If you press 5 while you're in the note entry tool, you'll get a note a 5th above. If you press Shift 5, you'll get the note a 5th below. So that's a good shortcut to know. Anyway, if I want to add an actual independent layer, because these are still belonging to the same layer, in other words, the C and the G are still part of the top layer, then what you need to do is switch layer. So you go to layer 2, and now everything you enter will be in a different layer. So let's say let me switch to the Speedy Entry. That's the tool I usually use anyway. And I'll add, let's say, whole note E. Now notice that it changes color. The reason is not that it's a mistake, but it's just so you know, just by glancing at the score, what things belong to, what layer things belong to. And it's just good for you, because let's say you're trying to edit, say you don't want that E to be there anymore, and you're going in and you have layer 1 selected and you have the Speedy Entry, and you go in and you try to delete it, nothing will happen. Because you're affecting only layer 1. in order for you to delete this, you'll have to go to layer 2. If I'm not talking about deleting that specific node, of course, if I want to delete the whole thing, I'll just delete the whole measure. So I would have to go layer 2, or let's say I want to change the nodes to like 2 east there. That's better, right? Okay, now sometimes you'll get the situation where you wanted to use 2 layers and you change your mind for whatever reason. So now you have all these notes in layer 1 and then just a couple of notes in layer 2, which is, I mean, nothing happens if you do that, but it is kind of a pain if you're editing. So you have to switch layers back and forth. So there's a handy tool there, handy way to get through that, which is to just select a measure, right click, and go to move copy layers. And what this will do is it'll take the content of layer 2 and you could say put it all into layer 1. And you could do this multiple at the same time. You could have all the contents of layer 1 go into layer 2 while contents of layer 2 go into layer 1. So what happened now is just shifted back to layer 1, I'm sorry. So that's pretty helpful. Okay, I think that'll be enough for this video. I'm going to move on to the next video when we talk about playback.